and welcome to the very first ESPC Live. For tonight, we're going to be talking to you about all things property. My name's Ash, we're here at the Sky Bar in Edinburgh, and tonight I'm joined by our CEO, Paul Hilton. Hi,
Hello.
Paul.
Good evening.
Nice backdrop we've got going on here.
It certainly beats the ESPC boardroom, that's for sure, Ash.
It definitely beats the boardroom for sure. We're also joined tonight by a lovely live audience. We've also got our expert panel of solicitor estate agents, and also thank you so much to everyone who is joining us live from home and streaming across one of our social platforms. So thank you so much for that. We've got a lot of things to get through tonight, a lot of great information and a lot of discussion points. We're going to be exploring the property market in 2022. We're going to be having a look at some key stats and some key figures that Paul's going to run you through shortly. We're also going to be touching on mortgages and lettings. But more importantly, it's a chance for you to ask absolutely any questions that you might have. So please do get in contact through one of our social platforms, and we'll try our very best to make sure we answer all that for you. So before we kick off with some stats tonight, we're going to give you a quick reminder of some of the key economic facts that affected the property market in 2022.
Breaking news this morning, it's war. President Putin announces the start of a military operation.
Energy experts in the UK are warning that the cost of the average household dual fuel bill could rise by at least £700 by the time the new energy cap comes into force in the autumn.
Two cabinet ministers, two people that Boris Johnson appointed as Chancellor, decided that they had had enough.
Hasta la vista, baby. Thank you.
I have just accepted Her Majesty the Queen's kind invitation to form a new government.
Buckingham Palace has announced the death of Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II.
Our growth plan has delivered all those promises and more, Mr. Speaker, and I commend it to the House.
That was more or less where the statement happened. So you see that point where it kind of picks up a little bit, and then it's down by about a full cent against the dollar in a matter of a few seconds.
I'm not going to give people advice on their property purchases, but what I would say is that I am resigning as leader of the Conservative Party.
I'm standing here as your new Prime Minister.
It's hard to list the sectors, the range of workers walking out.
Today we've increased bank rate by 0.75 percentage points to 3%. This is the 8th consecutive increase in bank rate since December of last year.
'22 was a momentous year. As the saying goes, there are decades when nothing happens, and then there are weeks when decades happen, and it did really feel like that in 2022. But what did it actually mean for the property market? Well, we're going to have a look at that tonight. ESPC has over 140 solicitor estate agents that operate across Edinburgh, Lothians, Fife and Borders, and we might have to squeeze some of them in tonight, so we'll be coming to our panel shortly. But before we do that, we're going to have a look at the headline statistics for 2022.
Paul, I think one of the first things that people always want to know about, I don't know about you, but is how much are properties actually selling for? So what is the average selling prices? So can you talk us through that for 2022?
I certainly can, Ash. I must apologise to my neighbours now who always ask me that question because they know I work at ESPC, ask me how prices are doing. In last year then, 2022, we saw a 5.8% increase on 2021. The average selling price now for the area sits at £284,735.
Amazing. So another one of the key metrics that we look at when we are, looking at the property market as a whole is key metrics including sales volume, so how much properties are actually sold through our ESPC solicitor estate agents, and also listings, so how many properties are coming onto the market. Can you talk us a little bit through what happened last year there?
Yeah, certainly in terms of the activity then, sales were down 14.4% on the previous year, but they were actually up on 2020 and what we would see as a normal year, which is 2019. Listings again a little bit down, 1.7% again on 2021. But generally we are returning to a more normalised level of activity, and again we'll be talking to our panel a little bit more about that later. Interestingly enough, the speed of sales, so the time from a property coming on the market to actually going under offer, was a mere 15 days. That was 2 days quicker than it was in 2021. So
15 days,
I know.
Just over 2 weeks, that is incredible. But Paul, I think as we know, it's not always just about the selling time, so that's really great, but it's about how much you actually get for your property. So what about percentage against home report price achieved? Can
Absolutely.
you talk us through that?
Yeah, this is probably the most important metric because it really is about what you're actually getting for your property. And 89.9%, so nearly 9 out of 10 properties sold for the home report value or higher. And that was up from 82.7% in 2021. ESPC solicitor estate agents achieved 107.1% of the home report value. So well done, guys. A great effort for the year. And that was actually up 2.2% on 2021. So again, really strong market there, and certainly our firm's doing really well. 34% of properties just underwent to a closing date as a way of ultimately selling that property as well. So if I could summarise it, I would say that we saw in last year, we saw rising house prices. We saw a really quick speed of sale, a premium still being paid for property. But we're starting to see a return to general, what we'd say is more normal activity levels after a particularly manic previous year. Volumes-wise, in terms of where most properties sold, Dunfermline saw the highest number of sales, followed by Leith, and then
completely unrehearsed, it's Kirchdorfen.
Thanks, Ash. I think it's important, they're the statistics, but I think it's also important that we get the story behind the headlines. So I'm going to have a quick word with Andrew Diamond. So Andrew is the solicitor, partner and head of property at Lindsay Solicitor Estate Agents here in Edinburgh. Andrew, if I could just ask you first off, how was the market for you in 2022? And were there any emerging trends, anything that you saw happen in the market?
Thanks, Paul. I think the first thing to say is really when we talk about the market, there isn't really such a thing as the market.
Yes.
It is something we talk about, but the reality is there are hundreds or thousands of different little micro markets going on in lots of different areas, affecting lots of different kinds of property, and we take them all and smash them all together into one big thing we call the market. Yes. But in actual fact, that's not necessarily representative of what's going on anywhere at any given time. But but for the purposes of dealing with this in a very general way, it's what we talk about. I think that in 2022 we very much had a first 3 quarters of the year and a last quarter of the year. It wasn't quite a game of 2 halves. It was a game of 3 quarters and then a quarter. But the first 3 quarters was very much a market where there was very, very strong demand that outstripped supply. Yeah. That was true across the board, but particularly in relation to family homes, particularly in relation to properties with good outdoor space. We found it became quite a small market, and I think the reason for that is very often buyers are also sellers are also buyers. Yes. For many people in that situation, being able to do one thing without the other is no use. When the market goes too far that way and becomes a real strong sellers market, people who naturally want to sell very often look and think, I would sell, I can sell, I'm not worried about that, but I am worried about the purchase end of it. It's too difficult.
The choice, I'm going to defer the decision. And we saw that in the statistics, instructions down year on year, and I think there's some of that, wasn't there, where sellers just couldn't see that property.
I think as solicitor agents, we've all got a lot of clients who we know are quite keen to do something. But a lot of people holding off, not because they were worried about the sale side of things, but because they just didn't think the property was there for them to buy, or it was going to be too difficult to buy, or prices were a bit too crazy. So a lot of people who, the volume wasn't there in the market because a lot of people chose to sit out rather than become involved in something that was a bit lopsided.
If we had more time, we'd talk about ESPC's Unlock product, product, but that's not really the time or place, so it's for a different day. So that was the first 9 months of the market. We saw lots of headlines about the cooling in the market in the last quarter. What is your own experience?
I think what we undoubtedly saw in the last quarter was people becoming just a lot of people coming just a little bit spooked. The banks amongst them. There was still decent demand. Still a lot of buyers there. Still a lot of people there willing to pay a fair price for the property that was available. Some people actually seeing it as an opportunity to get in and get something bought when they'd been frustrated for a period of time. But there was definitely a bit of a drop off in demand. Definitely a lot of people in sort of wait and see mode. Let's wait and see what the banks do. Let's wait and see what happens with interest rates. Let's wait and see what we think is going to happen with the market.
There's certainly a couple of weeks, wasn't there? I think certainly after so many things happened very quickly when there was that feeling that everything was on pause, and we saw that even in the website statistics on the ESPC. But then we sort of quickly overcame that, and people started to look again and started to view and ultimately started to buy again, I think. Yeah,
there were a couple of weeks where it wasn't just the property market. There was a couple of weeks where nobody quite knew what was going on with anything, and
including multiple prime ministers.
that all changed again. That all changed again quite quickly. I think people recognised that there was going to be a bit of a resetting of the market. I always think when a market starts to change, it probably takes about 6 months from the time that starts to happen to the point where you get everybody back onto the same page again, and everybody starts to understand what the reset version of the market looks like. I think we're well into that. We're well into that process now.
I'd agree.
You know, it is a slightly different market now, and I think it will be a slightly different market going into 2023.
Okay, thank you, Andrew. I'm sure we're going to have a discussion at some point about what might happen in 2023. But moving on, Murray from ESPC Mortgages, if I can just ask you, I'm going to quote that analogy again. Was it a football analogy? Was it a year or two halves for the mortgage market?
I think I'm probably going to echo quite a lot of what Andrew's already said. Absolutely a year of 3 quarters and a quarter. We'd had quite a sustained period of extremely low interest rates, and I always felt it would correct itself at some point, but 2022 saw just steady increases. It was continual increase in rates, lenders tightening their criteria, making the whole process of getting a mortgage a bit more of a challenge, not just for myself, but for the people buying the properties themselves. But in saying that, there was never a shortage of mortgage products available, much as people were led to believe. It was just that lenders were repricing based on what was happening in the market. So there were steady increases, and then when we hit the last quarter of the year, totally agree, the market was spooked, lenders' rates rocketed, lenders did not know what was going on, they panicked, forecasts were ludicrously high for Bank of England rates and these types of things. So there was a lot of adjustment and a lot of panic. But, pleased to say that really has settled over the last couple of months.
But the avoidance of doubt, they sort of baked in certain rises. We've not really seen that. Again, we'll talk about 2023 later, but even latterly in the last quarter of 2022, you started to see some of those fixed price products come down, didn't you?
Yeah, we did, and that was despite the Bank of England increasing rates by 0.5%. And this week, lenders are still letting us know that fixed rates are coming down. So the market's a lot more stable, lenders are a lot more confident, and that gives me a lot of hope for 2023 being a lot more positive, I would think. So, yeah.
Feels like a good place to leave you there. If we may, there would be no review would be complete of the property market where I'll look at the rental market. Nikki, I'm going to come to you, head of ESPC Lettings. Nikki, I've got here rent caps, eviction moratoriums, and we saw the additional dwelling supplements increase as well. A pretty uneventful year?
Yeah, not hardly anything happening at all. There were quite a few obstacles along the way, but there always has been in the rental market, and these are not necessarily new things that we've experienced, and we've got past them before, we'll get past them again. What we have seen in the rental market is maybe not as much as in the sales market when we had a split of the year. It's just been crazy busy the whole time. I think it really started in the summer where we saw a big demand and not enough supply.
Yes.
landlords or potential investors maybe were a little cautious, as the guys have mentioned, so there wasn't as many properties coming to the market. And also tenants are renting for longer periods of time, so there's not that re-let property coming back to the market. So definitely supply and demand weren't quite levelling out, and that's still the same now. But in terms of how things are and moving past any obstacles or difficulties, then it's a pretty resilient market. And in somewhere like Edinburgh, where the people are moving in and out of the city the whole time, then, you know, it's a good place to be if you're thinking of being a landlord, I would say. Yeah.
And what have you?
I know, exactly. It's almost as though it does the work for me.
Indeed. So I think the common theme that we're picking up there really, it was a year of sort of almost imbalance, really, a supply and demand imbalance with a huge demand and a relatively small supply. And again, I'm sure we're going to touch upon 2023 shortly. Ash, I'm going to come to you. Dare I ask, have we had any questions in? It's a live event, so we are hoping to get some questions in. Have we had any?
We have. Do you know what? We've actually been inundated with lots of great questions, Paul. Thank you very much. So remember, if you do still have any questions that you'd like to ask us, please just drop us a line on the platform that you are live streaming from now. But I thought before we just got into the questions that everyone submitted, I thought we could introduce our lovely panel. And this is my Cilla Black moment. What's your name and where'd you come from?
Hi, thank you. Hi, good evening, everyone. I'm Laura Walker. I'm a solicitor and partner at Dean Solicitors and Estate Agents.
Hi, my name's Imran Ali and I am a trainee solicitor at Wallace Quinn.
Hi, I'm Caitlin Keegan from Gillespie McAndrew. I'm a solicitor and associate in the team there.
And I'm David Marshall. I'm Operations Director with Warner Solicitors and Estate Agents.
I'm Amy Howard, a property consultant at Nielsen's Solicitors and Estate Agents.
What a team. Well, welcome, guys, and thank you so much for joining us tonight. So we'll just fire into the questions if that's okay. But I think one of the ones that are coming through is kind of overwhelming, and I think as Paul just touched on there, is I think it'll be no surprise to our panel or anyone who's viewing, is what's in store for the property market in 2023. So can we look at our crystal balls? Is there any predictions? And Amy, do you want to, you've got the mic, will we start with you?
Sure, absolutely. Well, I think the past couple of years have taught us that it's impossible to predict global political and economic events. And of course, the property market isn't immune to those factors. But what we can look at is how the market's performed historically, what those drivers are behind the market, and what we experience here in Edinburgh and the Lothians. And the market here is historically very resilient. We've seen that time after time, and we've got a massive amount of demand that's been outstripping supply astronomically over the past couple of years. It's been a really tricky market, as the others have mentioned. And I think what we're heading into in 2023 is a more balanced market, not the seller's market perhaps that we've been in for the past couple of years, but a market that's not a buyer's market either. And that's going to be driven by population expansion in Edinburgh. The National Records of Scotland's population predictions show that Edinburgh and the Lothians will grow by about 6,500 people this year. And if you stretch that out to 2030, you're looking at almost 50,000 extra people living here. And that actually represents 75% of the overall population expansion for the whole of Scotland. So that interest, those people who are moving here are coming here to Edinburgh and the Lothians. We've got a finite amount of space. We're a small city geographically. We're hemmed in by the Pentland Hills in one direction and by the Firth of the Forth in the other. So, you know, property in good central locations, close to transport, close to amenities, should stand to do very well. Added into that, we've got low unemployment and we've got good availability of mortgages. As Murray was saying, there's thousands of mortgage products available to suit just about every borrower. So those things make me cautiously optimistic that we're heading into a good year for the property market, a more balanced market and an easier one for everyone.
That's brilliant, Amy. Thank you so much. That was so insightful. Just to ask another quick one coming on there, but I've got you. There's been a lot of sensationalist headlines, especially on what they would say is a UK market. Do you have any comments to add?
I mean, I'm afraid I would say that the UK market is as mythical as the Loch Ness Monster. There's no such thing. We've got a patchwork of individual markets all across the UK, and what we can talk about is the market here in Edinburgh and the Lothians, and what's happening, what those market dynamics are, what those drivers are. Not written by a journalist sitting behind a desk in the southeast of England, but speaking to a panel of people like us who are living and working within the Edinburgh and Lothians market is where you'll get the true picture of what's really happening.
Definitely. Thank you so much, Jamie. That was a really great answer.
Thank you.
So I've just had something come in here from a Jamie on Twitter. And Jamie is looking to buy a home. He's asking, should I look to buy now or should I hold off? Good answer. Good question, Jamie. So if Imran, do you want to take this one? Yeah. I'm just picking on people.
It's a really good question, and I think possibly one of the more popular questions among first-time buyers. I think the reason I say it's popular is because obviously we've seen a lot of the turmoil that's been discussed here by Murray, and obviously the previous panel before me, with the mortgages and things like that, it looks like total turmoil and the market looks quite unsuspected. Yeah. But for this, one thing I would say that I think in that we've debunked a lot of these rumours and proved that it is stabilising, it's getting back to normality after that crazy wee period. So in answering that, I would say, and this sounds like an absolute cop-out, so I apologise, but again, it comes down to the customer and the person as a whole. So, and at the individual, it depends on, if the property is right, if the price is right, just the whole conditions of the whole transaction are right for them. If they want to go in and buy, then I think if all of that ticks the boxes for you and you're not overstretching yourself to try and afford it, and the mortgage product that you choose is perfect for you, then absolutely go for it. I would say if you're always waiting for the perfect time, it may never come, because in many markets there's pros and cons to every market. So I think, you could be sitting going back and forth for a long time on that. So I think if you're always waiting for that perfect time, it may never come. And like Paul's already said, between a house going on the market and then closing 15 days later, that's no time at all. So if you're waiting that whole time, you may lose out on the property, that's actually perfect for you. So again, I know it's sitting on the fence, but I say it just comes down to the person. If it works for you, then perfect, go for it.
Brilliant. So just go for it. Just go for it. Thank you so much, and that was amazing. Thank you. So the next one we have up here is from a Susan on Facebook. Susan is contemplating selling her home, and should she buy or should she sell first? It's that age-old conundrum, isn't it? Laura, would you like to take this one?
Great.
Thank
so,
you.
yeah, it's a great question and a popular question that we get asked very often. Buying and selling is not an exact science, and the decision to buy or sell first can really weigh on someone's mind. So if you're fortunate enough to own a property, it's a huge decision, and you really should speak to your solicitor before you take any steps. But as we've said, Edinburgh is a competitive and fast-paced marketplace. So often that decision can be taken out of your hands when the right property appears in the ESPC, and then you're rushing around trying to get that offer in subject to sale. Subject to sale offers do have their downsides. The seller may be not that receptive if they've maybe bought another property or are not keen to get into a chain. You don't know your exact finances. You might actually end up overpaying for a property, and not to mention the stress. It's very stressful when you offer subject to sale. You're generally given 4 to 6 weeks to have your property under offer, and that can really put a lot of pressure under someone. So if you're brave enough to take that leap of faith, market your property, you will put yourself in a much better position when trying to secure that dream home. You'll know your finances, you can then agree dates of entry, and it just puts you in a much better position going forward. So I think in summary, as the market starts to balance out, I would certainly recommend to clients to market their property first and put themselves in a much better position for buying.
That's great, Laura. I think it was really insightful. And just on that, can you negotiate your date of entry?
Yeah, in theory, you can negotiate your dates of entry, provided missives are not concluded and all parties are agreeable to that. You should always go into things in good faith. You don't want to change dates of entry last minute on anyone. But yes, in theory, you can change your date of entry and give yourself perhaps a little bit longer to find that property.
Perfect. Thank you so much. That's great. Paul, I can actually see a couple coming in here for lettings and mortgages. Would you like to take this over to your panel?
I will, Ash. I think I need either longer arms or a bigger table. But I do have a question here from Nathan, who I think must be a landlord. Nathan's asking, will we see in 2023 more landlords selling? And Nikki, I'll ask you that question.
I hope not. I don't think so. There was a little bit of uncertainty. Landlords were unsure about mortgage rates. Is my rent going to cover this? And a few people decided to get out of the market. But going forward, it's actually been a really positive couple of months. We've seen rents at the highest that they've ever been for any new tenancies. So we know that there is a freeze on any rent increase at the moment, but for any new tenancies, rents are actually up 11.9% and at the highest that they've been for 16 years. properties are taking just 12 days to let. So it's all really encouraging for potential landlords. So I can't see that they're wanting to get out of the market. Many of them are still seeing it as a long-term investment, which it is. And they're also providing homes which are in great need at the moment. So I think it's a place to be. It's a good investment still to be. And my advice would be, if you've got a buy-to-let property, then keep hold of it.
Absolutely. Yeah. And if Nathan does have to sell, please use a ESPC.
Of course, of course.
I only do 2 plugs. That's the second one tonight. Thank you, Nikki. It seems to be quite a few questions coming in here. I've also got one from Josh, who's a first-time buyer. Josh is asking, are there any particular schemes relevant to first-time buyers available at the moment? Murray, it's a bit of a moving feast, but there are, I think, aren't there?
Yeah, it's definitely a moving feast, and there's maybe not quite as many as there were a year or two ago, but absolutely there's still assistance out there for first-time buyers. 2 that I just want to touch on.
Yep.
One is what we would call a shared equity scheme, where the government will provide help with the deposit in the way of an interest-free loan. Josh would have to have a 5% deposit himself, whether he's using this type of scheme or not. But it's called LIFT, and this scheme would provide between 5 and 40% of the value of the property that person is buying. Now, the LIFT scheme does have certain thresholds, so wherever you're buying, whatever postcode it is, there will be a threshold to the maximum purchase price.
Right.
But if you move forward for that, they will hold an equity share in that property, of which you pay no monthly cost. It's an interest-free loan. But when you come to dispose of the property or sell it, or you can choose to pay it off before then, they would take back the same percentage, but potential of a higher value of property. So that's where the government would make back, their investment in that property.
Got you.
The second I wanted to touch on is slightly different. It's not so much shared equity, but there's a scheme called the Golden Share, which is most commonly on new build properties if the builder participates in that scheme. And what the Golden Share is you would buy the property, you would have 100% equity in that property, but you would pay 80% of the value. So that's the incentive there, and that extra 20% actually is viewed by the lender as extra deposit, which helps with the mortgages available. And then again, if you come to sell that property, you sell it at the market value, but you would receive 80% of that. So 2 slightly different options, but yeah, there are still schemes out there, and it's worth looking into those to find if any of them suit.
That's really encouraging. Thank you. Okay. Thank you, Murray. Andrew, I have you. We just had an update there from Amy's view on how things have been going. We talked about more, I use the word normalised, but more stabilised and more balanced market. Yeah. What's your own thoughts on that?
I think as we go into 2023, I think we're going to move from, we talked earlier about a market that it has been quite imbalanced. It's been quite a strong market for sellers. It's a bit of a, we talked about a bit of a vicious circle where would-be sellers don't come to market because they're too worried about not being able to buy. I think as the market comes back into balance, that becomes a bit more of a virtuous circle. I think you get into a situation where a bit of the fear of not being able to buy disappears. Therefore, sellers are more willing to come to market. Sometimes sellers are looking at it, saying there'll be more situations where they're simply looking at it saying, I'm going to go back to doing this a more traditional way. I'm going to sell before I buy.
Yes. Which is probably a good thing, is we believe.
Yeah, I mean, what happens as the market comes back into balance is it becomes more tradable. If you need to do both ends, you need to do both the purchase and the sale, it just becomes much more possible to get from A to B. With those 2 stops in the middle. When the market's lopsided either way around, it's harder to do that.
Yeah, so a nice functioning market.
Yeah, it's
enough supply, enough buyers. That would be very.
It's a market that functions well. You won't see. I mean, if it comes more into balance, you won't see 15-day average sale times.
No,
that's not necessarily a bad thing.
Absolutely
You won't necessarily see some of the crazy prices that were achieved last year. For people who are buyers and sellers, in the very buoyant sellers market, it swings and roundabouts. You're getting a lot of money for your own house, but you're paying a lot for the one you're buying. It's the same in a slightly more settled market. It's just slightly different swings and slightly different roundabouts. So overall, I think for most people, this will be a more settled, more balanced, as I say, more tradable market, for want of a better way of describing it.
Indeed, and I think everyone here would take that right now, if that's the market we have in 2023. Ash, there seems to be a lot coming in. I can't read them from here, so you're going to have to help me out.
I'm trying to keep up with public. fast. But yeah, so we've got one here that's from Will. He's thinking of selling, but he's not sure where to start or who he should even speak to. So I'm assuming that, Will, you're maybe a first-time seller. Any advice? So yeah, Dave, I'm going to go for you.
We're armed. Excellent. Sorry, so the question was?
Yeah, so I think basically Will's looking to sell, but he's not sure like who to even speak to even start the kind of conversation. Who should go to?
The serious answer is there's two things you'll want to do. First and foremost, you'll want to get an assessment of your property's value. And secondly, you'll want to select a solicitor estate agent to entrust to do the marketing of your home and the subsequent legal work on your sale and indeed on your purchase if indeed you're buying as well, as most people will be. Fortunately, I think almost without exception, every solicitor estate agent does offer a free property valuation service. So usually worth doing a bit of research, getting 2 or 3 firms that you like out, and they'll be able to, as well as offering you an assessment of your property's value, which is great for budgetary reasons, particularly again if you've got an onward purchase. You'll also be able to ask them about the service that they offer, even at the most sort of fundamental level, where your property will be marketed. Paul said I think he would only do 2 plugs for ESPC, but I'll do you a third, because obviously, in all seriousness, at Warners we track where the buyer inquiries come from, because for obvious reasons you want to make sure you're spending your client's marketing budget wisely, and typically you're looking at 60 to 70% of buyer inquiries come directly from ESPC. So you know, if you're the agent you're talking to isn't marketing your home there, you're missing out on a huge pool of buyers. That notwithstanding, really be quizzing them. What are they going to do? How are they going to get you the best price for your property? How are they going to go the extra mile? Are they open longer hours, or whatever else they might be doing to really get you that best price? It's your most important financial asset, so you want to make sure it's well looked after by whoever is selling it for you.
That's brilliant. That's a really good answer. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
Okay, we've got another one coming, and it's from Dean. And Dean is, as a buyer, what can I do to get myself in the best position possible to offer? Caitlin, we've not heard from you yet.
Okay.
Thank you.
Fair enough. I think that's actually a really good question, because if you're doing it for the first time or you haven't moved in a while, I think I can say most of us probably start thinking about a house move and then get on ESPC, start scrolling, and you're sort of half thinking about it, and then you think, oh, that looks okay, I'll go and have a look at that property. And then you fall in love with the property, and then it's panic stations, isn't it?
Yeah.
So what I would say is try, if you are thinking of moving, do your research, get organised. Obviously think about what deposit you have, where that's coming from. Speak to somebody like Murray, get an idea of what type of mortgage you can get, what suits you, your position, and know what you can afford, and that helps you to think about where you can afford to buy. What I would also say is, speak to solicitors, get fee quotes, get an idea of what the costs are. Tax is a big cost, LBTT, so get all of that information to hand. And also, I would say help your solicitor to help you. Give them your ID. We have to do so much now in terms of compliance. Everybody's nodding around me. Yes. That we have to, get all that source of wealth information. It's much easier for us to help our clients if we have all of that up front. I think, and again, I'm sure everybody will nod. The nightmare is somebody phones you, I have a closing date tomorrow. I've seen this property, I love it. And you're thinking, oh, I haven't got anything. Help us help you by getting all the information to us. And, so we get to know you as well, so we can advise you correctly. That's what I'd say to a buyer.
That's really solid information there. Thank you so much, Caitlin. Right, I'm just going to we've got quite a lot of questions coming in here, so I'm just trying to keep up. Okay, so we've got one here. Again, I'll ask this to the panel. So do you think sale prices will return closer to home report values in 2023? That's from Robert on YouTube.
Don't you get no one? I think the short answer is yes. As others have alluded to. I think there's going to be, and we're already starting to see it, a better balance between supply and demand. And I think, frankly, that's probably a healthy thing for the market. It's been incredibly difficult, and I think one of the things that prevented people putting their property onto the market is if you know the homes you're offering on have got 10 notes of interest at a closing date, it's incredibly difficult to know what you're going to need to offer in order to secure that property. Whereas you've got that sort of better balance between supply and demand. I think it'll, yes, selling prices will be closer to valuation, but it'll help the market move that much better. And from the point of view of someone who's selling and buying, if you're spending a wee bit less on your next home, even if you're accepting a wee bit less for your current one, then especially if you're moving up the ladder, then by and large that tends to be good news.
Great, thanks, Eve. Amy, did you want to add?
Sure, I'll add a little on. Thank you. There's two things, the 2 points I would make. First of all, the pace of the market will have a lot to do with that. The home report value is reliant upon sales data from sales that have concluded, and where you take into account that those sales have sometimes taken 3 months before that data has become available, the home report value is then lagging behind the pace of the market. So in a more even-paced market, we'll see those home report values keeping up with the pace of the market a little bit better. The other thing is the affordability of mortgage borrowing is tighter than it's been for a lot of buyers, and that means that if they can only mortgage against the value in the home report, they're not left with a huge amount of money to splash over and above home report value.
Exactly.
That said, at Nielsen's we had a closing date today with 15 notes of interest that went £40,000 higher than the home report value. And you know, that level of competition means that it's really unpredictable, as Dave was saying, for buyers to know quite what to offer. But if you speak to your solicitor when submitting your offer, they'll give you really good, considered professional advice on what you need to do, what you need to put into that offer to make sure that your offer is successful.
Brilliant, thank you, Amy. Yes, so make sure that you're speaking to your solicitor at a stage, and there's never too early a time, is there? Really, you can get in touch at any point. Thank you. Okay, I'm just going to try and fire through some of these ones. I think I've got one for you potentially, Nikki. We've got one here saying, do you think the recent emergency legislation for restricting rents has resulted in landlords hiking up rental prices and therefore had the opposite effect in helping people?
I think it may have slightly backfired, which, as I mentioned earlier, the new kind of any new tenancies are now seeing the highest rents that we've ever seen, or certainly we've seen for some time. So maybe that didn't help out potential tenants as much as the government were planning to. That is only for new tenancies. So where you are in a current tenancy and have been for a period of time, there is a freeze on those rents at the moment. And that will take up a large percentage of the rental population, if you like. So there will be a lot of people who haven't had rent increases. So I guess it evens it out. For a lot of people, they'll be in a more comfortable position. Others are struggling to get into the property market and get on the rentals because that's gone up. So it's difficult. What we're seeing from April, they're going to be allowed to increase rent by 3%. So it's going to be capped at 3% unless there's a particular given circumstance where the landlord could appeal to increase it more. So that may well start to even out new landlords trying to hike up the rent because they know that they can increase mid-tenancy. So I think come April, it will start to level back out again.
That's great. Thank you so much, Nikki. I think we've got another one here, Murray, actually, it might be for you. So what about people who have awful credit scores? Where do they stand in buying? And that's from Sam on YouTube.
Quite a difficult question to answer succinctly there. What somebody thinks is an awful credit score may not be, and there's different reasons why people may not have a strong credit score. They may have had defaults, mispayments, or they may have simply not built up a credit. There's a lot of young first-time buyers I speak to who have never had a loan, never had a credit card, so they haven't built up the credit score. But I would say in that instance, still come and speak to us, and if we're unable to move forward at that point, we can provide some hints and advice and tips on how to improve that situation. Two of the most simplest ways are make sure you're registered on the voters roll at the address you stay at. And secondly, it sounds counterintuitive, but if you don't have any credit that a lender can look at how you maintain it, take on a credit card, use it little and often, clearing it every month, and that will help to boost your credit score. There's also lenders that can take a more balanced view as to the nature of what's caused a poor credit score. So just believing that your credit score isn't strong enough doesn't mean you shouldn't come and seek advice, and you never know what the outcome might be. If it's not, we can move ahead straight away. We'll find the best solution to get to that point at some point in the future. So.
That's great. Thank you, Murray and Sam. Hopefully that helped you out there. We've got another one here for the panel. So what are the extra costs involved in buying a house? I don't know if... Do you want to take that one, Caitlin? Yeah.
So, well, conveyancing-wise, in buying a house, you've obviously got your solicitor fee, which is not always as high as you think it is. I know people think, solicitors, here we go, but it's not. Obviously, you've got LBTT, so land and buildings transaction tax, and it's very much a sliding scale tax, so get a bit of advice on that. Your solicitor will be able to advise you. The other costs are obviously registering the title deeds with the Registers of Scotland. So any of us here would be able to give you an accurate quote, you know, based on your budget. Other costs, I suppose, in terms of, you think about mortgage, maybe obviously Murray would be able to answer that. You know, you maybe should think about things like life insurance, maybe critical illness, things like that. Obviously, if you're selling and buying, you'll have removal costs, and then obviously sale costs. So, but as I say, any of us here would be able to help you with that, you know, if you get in touch direct with a solicitor estate agent.
Sorry, can I just to quickly add, one thing I would say is that I think there's a sort of general misconception that because of other areas of the legal profession, as soon as you speak to your solicitor, the meter's running, as it were, which isn't the case when you're buying a property. Again, almost without exception, you don't get charged for unsuccessful offers or for noting interest in properties, and it's not the case that as soon as you appoint a solicitor, that as I say, that meter's running. They'll give you an upfront quote, they'll happily submit offers on your behalf. The only point at which costs really would start to be incurred is when you have an offer accepted, and the legal work really starts in earnest.
Thank you.
Conference call.
This is actually really, really boring, but I think but it is really helpful. Is one thing I would say about the LBTT, so that's your land and buildings transaction tax. I would say they've got the calculator online, and I would say one of the best things is that, you know, you can go in and fire figures in through that. Now, for your first-time buyers, obviously they probably won't incur it any, depending on the price. But for people who are moving on, it'd be a good idea for them, because then it gives them an idea of how much they're paying on top, and they can just kind of go about and play about with the figures, and then it's not so much a surprise when they're getting hit with, you know what I mean, on their cash statement and things like that.
Thank you so much. Yeah, that's really good advice.
I think what we find is when people are contacting us for fee quotations is a lot of people just want the lowest fee possible, whereas actually you need to pay for a service. If you want, you know, expert advice and that person to be on hand when you need them, you need to pay a reasonable fee for it. I think we all charge fair fees through the ESPC, so I think that's something that's really important. Don't always look for the cheapest fee, look for value for money and a fair fee.
And some of the costs are fixed anyway, so it doesn't matter where you go. But it's always about free transparency, isn't it? That those things are in their itemised bill, because it's, if you don't know what you don't know, you may never know, if that makes sense. Still at best.
The whole team for answering that one. That was great, thank you. Okay, I think we've got another question coming up here. Nikki, I think it might be back to you again. You're popular tonight.
There's only one of me to answer these questions.
Okay. So this is coming from Callum on Facebook. Thanks, Callum. Is it possible to buy multiple properties buy-to-let at once, assuming capital for deposit is available, but never a landlord before? Is it a negative having no experience being a landlord? From Callum.
There's a lot of things in that question.
I know.
I feel that also some of them might be for Murray.
Yeah.
Sorry, I think I'm going to, if you could break it down, because there was quite a lot in there. So what are they?
The first one was, is it possible to buy multiple properties buy-to-let at once, assuming capital for deposit is available? But I've never been a landlord.
Yeah, if you were looking to build up a portfolio, and that you're looking to get a number of properties, then yeah, that's absolutely possible, providing you have the finances to do so. Yeah.
And Callum's obviously saying he's got no experience of being a landlord, but that you don't really
Well, in that case, you know, it's time for my plug. So if he doesn't have any experience, then, you know, speak to the experts. That's what we always say at ESPC. So, you know, if you were thinking about becoming a landlord, they're more than welcome to stop into our information centre on George Street, have a chat with one of the team. We can talk through the safety requirements, the legal requirements. We can talk through property management with them. We can hold their hand along the way. We can be involved as much or as little as they want. So the advice is there, definitely. And yeah, why not take the plunge? Yeah.
Just go for it.
Yeah.
Well, sadly, that's all we have time for this evening in terms of the questions. But thank you so much to everyone who has submitted something in tonight. If we didn't get the chance to read anything out, or you still have any burning questions you want to ask, we can put you in touch with one of our expert panel, or just email us at marketing@espc.com and we can get back in touch with you. But for now, it's back to Paul.
Thanks, Ash. I enjoyed that. Plenty of questions there. I'm absolutely delighted we had so many questions. Hopefully it gives you some insight into what happened in 2022 and certainly some predictions for what might happen in 2023. We did have a debate about doing this at the half-year stage, and I think from what we picked up tonight, I think we will be doing that. Finally, I think if you do have any burning questions still, as Ash said, you can contact us through email or you'll find us on espc.com.
So for anyone who is thinking about starting their property journey, whether you are looking to sell or buy or just have any questions and just need some advice, as Paul said, you can go onto espc.com. We've got lots of great information there. We're always hosting great events, so please do get in touch. But we can definitely get you in touch with one of our amazing solicitor estate agents who can also help you, or our mortgages or lettings team. So please just get in touch. But we also, if you're looking to buy any property, make sure that you are checking out espc.com first, because
this is the third plug.
No, we love a good plug.
In January, 85% of property you would find were marketed on an exclusive basis, and what that means is you'll find them on ESPC 72 hours before they appear anywhere else, and some properties will never appear on any other portals. So if you're serious about buying, or if you're just generally interested, you'll find them first on ESPC. Sounds like a good line for an advert.
So we just want to say one massive, huge thank you once again to our amazing expert panel tonight who have been really insightful. Thank you so much, guys. Also a massive thank you to our live audience who are here. Thank you. And last but definitely not least, thank you so much to absolutely everyone who has tuned in from home across our platforms tonight. It's been great to have you. And I think on behalf of Paul and I, we just want to say happy Burns Night. Hopefully you enjoy your haggis, neeps and tatties, and we look forward to catching you again sometime soon.
Thanks again.
Bye.